Alright, so back with another video today. We're going to be looking at the opening range breakout, and more specifically we're going to be looking at this short video that Andrea Simi has made. He's been making a lot of videos, and I've seen a couple of his live streams, and he does talk about this strategy. And it's a pretty common strategy, opening range breakout, but he gives a couple of filters that he claims will increase the win rate and reduce or increase the reward to risk and so on. So we're going to be taking a look at this, and specifically I want to take a look at this because once again I've been triggered by somebody using statistics in a way that I think is inaccurate. So anyway, I'm going to let the video play and then we're going to critique it in a second.
There is one very simple trading strategy that has been proven to outperform the S&P 500 over the last 20 years, and it's called the opening range breakout. You take the first 15-minute candle of every regular trading session in either the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq, and you either buy when price breaks above or you sell when price breaks below. It's literally easy as that. But here's how to put it on steroids. So if during the upper breakout through order flow you're able to see a big trade, you just know that smart money is on your side. So you can enter only when smart money is joining the movement. And if you draw the volume profile, the total trading activity inside of the range, instead of putting your stop loss below the opening range, you can put it below the highest volume area. So this confirmation brings you a higher win rate. This combination gives you a better risk to reward ratio. And the second way to put it on steroids is just to select the opening range breakouts, where for example this is the open of the previous session, but for example the previous session closed here. And whenever there's a gap between the close of the last session and the current one, there's a 70% chance that the gap will be filled. And once more, this is increasing your win rate. So it's very selective, but the odds are stacked in your favor. Let's see an example.
Okay, so he does go on to give an example here, a couple of examples. I'll let you watch the rest of that video on your own time. But I did take some notes that we're going to look at, and I did run a back test, so we're going to take a look at that as well. Okay, so here are my notes. Opening range breakout on steroids. Have I spelled steroids correctly? There you go. So opening range breakout on steroids, first 15 minutes, so 9:30 to 9:45 ES or NQ. I've run the data on NQ. I imagine it's going to be the same thing on ES. We buy on a 5-minute close above, or we sell on a 5-minute close below. Very simple. Now, the thing I really want to test, I've really misspelled steroids twice. Here's what I want to test, right? So today we're going to be testing this one. Trading towards a gap close means increasing your win rate. Now, it's implied that the 70% chance of the gap closing is the reason why this is going to increase your win rate, which, as we know, is not accurate. Okay, not accurate because, or simply based on the 70% chance of the gap closing. And the reason for that is you take any price that's close to the open, the chance of that being hit within the session is going to be high. That doesn't give you an edge. You have to actually use reward to risk. You have to see, you have to do all that. And in fact, in terms of gap closes, there are certain filters that you can do that I think will give you an edge on gap closes. But if you just simply trade towards the gap close, no filters, the edge is extremely minimal, and it ain't 70%. Okay, and then he does have these additional points, which we're not going to test today. We might test these in another video. But today we're focusing on trading towards a gap close means increasing your win rate. Is that actually true? So let's take a look at NinjaTrader to begin with. So he did give an example, but just to be clear on what we're testing here. So these are the first 3 candles that constitute the opening 15-minute range here. This is the 6th of January 2020, and we've run the data from 2020 to the end of 2025. So that's 6 years worth of data. And in this example, we can see there's the range. This candle here, this 5-minute candle, closes above. So we enter here, our stop goes below, 1 tick below the range here, and then we have a 1R. Now, in reality, you might use more than a 1R. You would have to test different parameters and see which one worked the best, but for the sake of testing this filter, we're going to be using 1R today. Now this pink line here, this is the previous day's close, so this will give you the gap. Now at this moment in time when we would have taken the trade, there would have been an open gap. So the way I've done this is I've recorded this as being towards the gap. Now you could argue that you should actually have your take profit here and maybe you should test it like this, right? So you have a 1R like this. That would be one way of testing it. And you could also say, what if it was below the market? Well, you could try having it as your stop loss, right? And then you could really compare whether trading towards the gap or trading away from the gap was more effective. And that might be a very interesting way of comparing this, but that's not what we've done today. We've just done it the normal way. So let me just show you the data anyway. So we've got buys and sells, and we've split the data up into separate ones here. So buys roughly 55% across the data set, and you can see it looks pretty good. But you do have to remember that this is over 6 years, and in real market conditions, it won't perform this well. So I probably wouldn't just use this by itself as it is here. But just for reference, that is, there is some edge there from the looks of it. And then sells is very minimal. I definitely wouldn't trade with that. But what I have recorded is the gap open here. So it's a 1 if we're trading towards the gap. It's a -1 if we're trading away from a gap. And it's a 0 if the gap's already closed. So what happens if we filter just 1, right? So just trading towards a gap. So here's what it looks like on the buys. And just for reference, we have 800-ish trades there. And if we filter it by this, then we have about 180. So we have quite a reduced number. And you can see that actually the performance gets a bit worse on the buys. Now with the sells, it does actually increase the performance a little bit, right? But my conclusion of this whole thing would be that neither one shows much of an edge. I think if you put the data together, it would be basically showing no edge whatsoever. So to me, what I can do is I can say, no, that's not true. Trading towards a gap close means increasing your win rate. I don't think that part's true. Now you could argue that maybe it's true if you have all three of them together and then you filter this. You could argue that, but just by itself, that doesn't seem to add anything. Now, testing these two additional claims, I think these are plausible, using order flow as a filter. Now, I can't think of how I would backtest this mechanically. I think probably what I would do is I would take my existing data and I would then go through manually and look at the order flow and see if I can notice any patterns. And maybe I'd be looking for, I don't know, a trade. Like what I've written here is aggressive delta, but maybe he's looking more for like the bubbles. It's probably called different things on different platforms, but you can have bubbles that show big trades. And, maybe if you've got a couple of those of a particular size, then you could use that as a filter. And you could test that manually. That's going to take quite a lot of time to do it manually, obviously, but I might make a video on that if anyone's interested in seeing that one. This one here, using volume profile to reduce the stop, this would be something like this. So I guess you would kind of go like this. Is it actually going to compute it? I don't know why it's not trying to do it. Maybe it's too far back in time. It doesn't want to do it. It's very possible. But anyway, this is what you would do. You'd run a volume profile and, imagine that there was like a point of control here. You'd put your stop down here and you would see if that affected it. I'm not convinced that that would make a huge difference, but maybe it would. So anyway, that's it for today. I think we can conclude that trading towards a gap close without any additional filters does not increase your win rate. The 70% chance of the gap closing doesn't imply that you're going to increase your edge doing that. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.